Jodi, you were, until very recently, the CEO of Vitamix, a fourth-generation family-owned business. During your time as CEO, you helped grow the company into a global brand, ushered in the company's 100th anniversary, and led the company through a challenging business environment during the pandemic. Over the course of your career, you've had the opportunity to work with many unique businesses all over the country and probably all over the world. What is one of your favorite or most memorable experiences?
Truly, at my time of Vitamix, my most memorable experience was when you have a passion for something and you're very purpose-driven, which I am. My purpose was to help people figure out how to eat healthier and recognize that Vitamix was a brand that they could do that in. And my great-grandfather started the company and pushed really hard to try to make that happen. Well, early on in 2004, I started to recognize that the world was changing. People were thinking about health and wellness differently. People were using words like organic and natural and whole foods and even phytonutrients, which seems a little geeky now. We'd been using it for decades, was starting to resonate. Research was coming out. All of a sudden people were thinking, wow, the food I eat can change the way I think about life and how I think about my own health. And that was happening. We were still a small company. And I had this amazing opportunity to say, this is what my great-grandfather wanted. At that point, it was probably 85 years before, right? This is why he started the company. How can we bridge from here to really being that brand and being a voice that could help make the shift that was happening, the way people think about food, a permanent shift? So the most exciting thing that I was a part of was I clearly had no idea how to be a president or CEO, right? I didn't grow up thinking that's what I wanted to be. All I knew was that I wanted to change lives. And this opportunity was on a platter in front of me. And in my mind, the only way I knew how to make that happen was to say, when I'm on fire, it's because I'm passionate about something and I'm purpose-driven, and I go after a goal and look out world. Like if there's an obstacle in my way, I will go through it, I'll overcome it, I'll do whatever it takes. And I figured if I could be that focused by being purpose-driven, why couldn't everyone else, everyone in the company, be purpose-driven and focused? And I didn't know how to transform our small company into a global brand that was going to change lives and become iconic, hopefully someday. So I simply said, well, if I could just gift everyone in my company the opportunity to understand their purpose and live with that purpose every day while they were at work, then maybe they can transform the organization because they understand what needs to be done in their particular area better than I do. It was the most unbelievable, transformative experience I've ever been through, to watch people, watch their eyes light up when somebody said, I believe in you. I want to help you figure out your purpose, and then I want you to spread your wings and fly. And they did. They did it beautifully. And Vitamix has now become truly a global brand, and we have people telling us they love our product and it's changed their life, and there is nothing more rewarding than that.
What was one of the biggest obstacles you had to overcome in your career, and how does that shape your perspective today?
So the biggest obstacle I had to overcome in my career is I didn't set out to be a president and a CEO of an organization, and I didn't set out to create a global brand. I set out to help people find their wings and give them a chance to fly. I set out to just be very purpose-driven in every kind of moment of my day and how I chose to do things. And when I was given the opportunity to lead the company, I truly had no idea. I hadn't prepared to be a president or CEO. And it goes back to what I shared earlier. All I could think of was, I know that I am so intrinsically wired. Like, you can't turn me off if I'm focused on something. And we all have it. When we have that well, you probably had it in the softball games, right? Or something in life where you could have kept going all night long. You could have overcome anything that was in front of you. I now know, after going back and getting my PhD, that's all about personal purpose. I didn't know that at the time. All I knew is that when it mattered to me, you had 1,000% of my focus. And all I could think of was, what if you could create a culture where everyone in the company had this opportunity to understand what their personal purpose was and then help them find this synergy between their personal purpose and what their job was that helped the company grow, right? And so that was my biggest obstacle, was one, not knowing how to do something and thinking that I had to do it the same way everyone else did. And when it finally dawned on me, I didn't have time to figure out how to do it the way everyone else did. And I had absolutely no interest in doing it the way everyone else did. I wanted to do it in a way that just would release this same personal fulfillment and joy that I was experiencing in life in every person that worked for me. So I set out to do that, and it was an amazing experience. At first I did it because I didn't know what else to do, right? You have to get creative. And as we were going through it, people come up to me and say, Jodi, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm leaving and it's all your fault. And at first that took me off guard. And they said, well, it's because you helped me realize that what I really want to do is be a yoga teacher in Seattle. And I unfortunately can't do that here in Cleveland. So I'm leaving to go live my dream. Well, she is not only an amazing yoga teacher in Seattle, but possibly one of our biggest and loudest salespeople in all of the Northwest, right? So just helping people discover something about themselves. And one of my biggest obstacles was so many people go into some sort of autopilot in life, and they don't realize that they personally not only matter, but they bring something so unique and a different perspective to the table, that if somebody gives them the permission to have a voice, the permission to have a dream, and a means of being able to do both, people light up and achieve things that they never even dreamed were possible.
Yeah. How long were you CEO for, and your whole professional career after you got your doctoral degree, which was from, where did you get your doctorate degree at?
At Case.
At Case.
Right here, yep.
Okay.
They have an amazing doctorate PhD program.
And that
right
was in?
I did my dissertation in the end of 2016, and I graduated in 2017.
Awesome.
So
what was the program?
It was their actual doctorate in management program, and I studied personal purpose. And what I discovered, because I followed my gut with personal purpose, and I learned about personal purpose in a way that I really hope most people don't have to. But I had a life and death experience, and a moment where I was told that there's a good possibility I wasn't going to make it. That moment, everything changed in my mind and my heart. I was only 30 years old at the time, and I decided, wait, there's no way. Nope, this is not over yet. I haven't even started yet. And I didn't know how much more time I had. I didn't know if I had hours or weeks or months or years. Spoiler alert, I had some time, thank goodness. But I decided that moment that I just wanted to live in a way that was making a difference. I wanted to have been on the planet for a reason. And up until the age of 30, I was still thinking everyone else was smarter than me, that I had so much to learn, that maybe someday I'd figure out what was relevant, but that someday hadn't come yet. That for me was that moment where I said, I'm gonna grasp this personal purpose thing. And at first I did it because I wanted to make a difference. But what I realized when I started living with purpose was I had so much joy and personal fulfillment. It was just off the charts. And so I decided, I applied the whole personal purpose concept into our culture at Vitamix, and it worked amazing as well. We're manufacturing, and we navigated 50% growth year over year over year without a hitch. The customers, we met customer satisfaction, we met demand, and it was unbelievable how we navigated through it. And I realized not only did this concept of living with personal purpose work for me, but it worked at the team level, and it worked at the organizational level. And then in my involvement with Team Neo, it works at an association and a community level. Like it's so much power here. So I went back to get my PhD to understand why. And the research is really clear that if you can live with purpose, if you understand what your personal purpose is, not only are you more engaged in your organization, even more engaged than if you work for a company that already has a higher purpose, but your commitment to whatever you're doing is greater. And this third piece jumped off the charts, or jumped off the page, which is living with purpose gives you that sense of joy and personal fulfillment. And it wasn't just me, it was real. this is real. So if we want to change our companies, if we want to change our own lives, if we want to change the lives of the people that work for us, or if we just want to change the lives of those around us, helping them discover that they matter and that they do have a personal purpose, and helping them figure out how to live with it can be transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. What is one thing you would never change about your career, even if you had the chance?
I can probably be a little intense. One of the things that I've had to overcome is not only am I a woman, and I tend to sometimes not be heard in a crowd, but I am also only 5 feet tall, right? And I knew that there's certain things that that needed to happen, and in order to make them happen, I early on, after this life and death experience, I became like a laser beam. I realized that there's certain superpowers that I happen to have. I'm very high in empathy. I care so deeply about people. I could take very disparate, complex concepts and ideas, and I can boil them down really quickly, and I can understand where it can take us. So that's just examples. We all have superpowers, but I realize that if I take all of my superpowers and I allow all of them to kind of converge and come together into a laser, I can have an incredibly powerful impact. And I wouldn't change that. Even if there may be some people that don't necessarily, like maybe that's a little too aggressive for them, wherever that laser beam is shooting, right? They prefer a different style. I came to a point where I realized I'm okay that that's who I am, and I'm okay that that's my style, as long as I can do it with compassion and grace for the other people around me, and help them understand why I'm being so focused. If I could change anything, it probably would have been to recognize that I am okay just who I am and how I am sooner in my life, and not wait for me to finally realize that it's okay to be who you are.
Yeah,
I wouldn't change that.
Now, you talk about your laser focus, and I can tell how determined you were in your career in leading people and empowering others. And you mentioned it's so easy to get caught up on just being on autopilot in your life or your career or whatever it may be. How did you inspire and do you inspire others to start living with their full mission and their purpose, rather than, and I don't want to call it snapping out of autopilot, but a lot of people are on autopilot. How do you inspire others to live a life fulfilling their mission and purpose?
The process of helping somebody recognize that they have the right to have a purpose is really where you start, and creating a culture in an organization so that you are constantly talking about it and helping people recognize what having a purpose is like. The harder part that I realized as a leader is you can share something with people, but if you don't live it every single day, then they lose confidence in the fact that are you, and I say like walk the talk, right? You hear walk the talk. Walking the talk is a real thing, right? It truly, truly is. If there's something that you believe in, that you want to help other people discover about themselves, then you have to live it that way yourself. So how do you do that? A lot of it is just through those conversations of helping somebody discover who they are. Getting outside of yourself and taking the opportunity to help somebody else discover something about them. And that even helps in the reverse, as you're helping other people discover things about themselves, discover their purpose, and giving them a chance to fly. All of a sudden, your purpose starts to take form because you're hearing all these other different perspectives. But there's a whole process, and that's a whole nother conversation.
How has Cleveland's business community and organizations like ACG Cleveland impacted your career, and what kind of value have you found in those types of communities?
One of the things I love about Cleveland, I love a lot of things about Cleveland, but my great-grandfather, my grandfather moved here because they said they were some of the hardest working, most dedicated people that they ever met. They moved their company to Cleveland. It was started in Illinois. I couldn't agree with them more, but I would add that the people in Northeast Ohio, not just Cleveland, but Northeast Ohio, is filled with people that care deeply. They're incredibly dedicated. And the third element is they are so giving. They're so giving of their time, of their experience, of their knowledge. It's wonderful to be in this area because you don't feel like you have to do anything alone, right? And ACG is an organization that does just that for people. It brings people together so they can bring their superpowers to the table, and those superpowers can help somebody else who maybe is facing that challenge but hasn't overcome it yet, right? And somebody else has been through it, or an opportunity, and they've seized the opportunity. So it's just a community that networks well and also really lifts everybody up, recognizing that the water level will rise for all. It's just a great, great community.
Who was one of your mentors, and do you recall an impactful piece of advice or experience, whether that be professionally or personally, that shaped your life?
When I was getting my MBA, I was working for a
This was at Washington State?
Yes,
Okay.
I was getting my MBA at Washington State. And I was working for a gentleman who was just an icon in the hospitality industry, especially in the restaurant industry. And it was Don Smith. And I was his TA. He was tough. His class would normally start at 8 o'clock, but he'd bring in guest speakers, and we would start the class at 6:27 a.m. So as his TA, I had to be there to have the doors open and the projectors set up, and anything else that he needed. So it was tough. But he was always very appreciative. And one of the ways that he showed his appreciation was by writing notes. And I've saved every single note he wrote me. And I recognize that when you receive a personal handwritten note from someone, that they took the time to put those thoughts together and to write it out on a piece of paper, it's meaningful. So that piece of advice, I've carried it with me. And at Vitamix, it was not uncommon that I would write over 400 notes a year to employees. If anyone ever had a milestone anniversary, or they started to go to school, or they graduated from school, or they got a promotion, like anything in life that was a moment that they get to celebrate or should celebrate, I wanted to make sure somebody was celebrating with them. So I'd write those personal notes. At first I thought I was doing it for them, again, and that I realized was I would do it in the evenings, or I'd do it over a cup of tea, and I'd take, I had pictures of all the employees, and even though I knew I had met all of them, I took that moment to just really reflect on their picture and reflect on who they are. And some of the most wonderful memories of conversations that we'd had together, or moments that we shared, or projects that we worked on together would kind of come to my mind as I was writing these notes. And as the company grew, and there was no way I was going to have a chance to interact with everybody on a regular basis, I still got to interact with them. They still got to join me for a cup of tea. And it was probably one of the most rewarding parts of my career, was that time I spent with all the employees.
How many employees in total by the end of your career were there at Vitamix?
So,
and you recently retired. That's right, June.
Actually, at the end of this week.
Oh, the end of this week.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, the end of September.
I won't say past
my
tense.
last day.
Past tense it. Then.
Well, by the time this goes live, it
yes.
will be past tense. So thank you. And I'm really excited to figure out what next.
Yeah.
Still being a very purpose-driven person, I'm not done living my purpose. There's still people out there, and I want to help them discover something about themselves, and I want to give them a chance to fly. And I want it to be, how many more people can I impact, every day. So I got a lot that I'm going to be working on once I finally unwind.
Outside of your professional career, you've dedicated significant time and energy to charitable activities. What are some of your favorite parts about giving back to the Cleveland community, and how has that generosity impacted your life?
One of my favorite things about giving back to the community in Cleveland is because so many people give back, and they care. And even the nonprofit boards that I've been on, the other members that are on that board, they're not on the board because of recognition or prestige. They're on it because they want to make a difference. And you can't spend that much time with a give back organization here in Cleveland and not and not feel lifted up yourself because and energized because of the dedication and the commitment of all of the amazing people that you end up working with. It's I know it's really an incredibly fulfilling and inspiring way to give back. And if for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to really embrace the giving back here in Cleveland, I really recommend that they do, because it's transformative personally.
How did running a family-owned business impact the way you approach decision making? So you are fourth generation?
I don't know that it's specifically because it was a family business, but it certainly adds a whole nother group of stakeholders that you have to keep in mind when you're making decisions. I follow the RASI model, the R-A-S-I, and the R stands for there's a person that's responsible for getting the decision made. The A is for there's somebody in the level of authority that does the final yes or no, or kind of oversight governance of the decision. The S is really important, and that is all the stakeholders are involved in that particular decision. And you should, as leaders, it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone who should have a voice in every decision that's made has the opportunity to share that voice. And then the I is there's a group of people that simply need to be informed when a decision is made. But it's really important to know who all those stakeholders are. And when you're in a family business, the family, whether they are owners or whether they are family members that aren't owners, or they could be eligible shareholders, all of them are a stakeholder in a lot of decisions. And it's not just, they're not just stakeholders because it has something to do with the business, but they're stakeholders because there's a future for that business as well. So involving, in my case, I was fourth generation, so making sure that the fifth generation, and then the sixth generation, and now our seventh generation, like making sure that their voice is heard. So by the time we're in a position to steward this family business over to the next generation, that they have a vested interest in it, that they understand, and that they recognize that it will be their turn to spread their wings and fly, and that they don't have to run the company like the generation before. So I know that there's a lot of complexity with a publicly held company as well. I'm certainly not downplaying that. It's just different dimension to look at your organization. I should say it's actually a benefit as well, because you can look at the organization with a perspective that goes decades out of what are we doing today to make sure the long-term sustainability of the organization in the next multiple generations down the road.
Over the course of your career, you've seen a lot of change. What do you see as the biggest change in the Cleveland business community from when you first started?
I know that all cities and communities still have a long way to go, but we are so much more inclusive as a community and as a city than we were when I first started. I came back to Cleveland, not working for Vitamix, but working for other organizations back in, when did I first come back? Probably 91. And I think we've lightened up, which is nice. I think we've become more inclusive. But I think we've also finally kind of gotten over ourselves a little bit. When I came back in 1991, I talked to people in Cleveland like, yeah, we're the best kept secret out there, and we don't want anyone else to know how amazing it is to live here in Cleveland. Well, that didn't do us any favors, right? Because it is an amazing place to live. But in order for us to be a vibrant, growing community, we need to have this infusion of people from the outside. We need to have a place where our young students are going to hopefully choose to go to school here in the Northeast Ohio area. And if they do go outside, we have to have reasons for them to want to come back, right? And all those amazing students that come into Northeast Ohio to go to the university have a reason for them to stay, and make it easy for them to stay, and give them that vibrant community to be a part of. I believe that the reason that we are truly becoming and rising up on the list of areas in the United States to live is because the one thing that hasn't changed, it's still an amazing place to live. One of the things that has changed is all of the diversity of people that are coming into this community that are helping us make it even more vibrant.
What advice do you have for the next generation of young professionals as they take on their careers?
So my advice for any young professional is, as early as possible, identify your superpowers and figure out what purpose you can live with for that day. It can change. Your purpose can evolve and change as you evolve and change, but be driven by something bigger than yourself. Identifying those superpowers, we oftentimes have a hard time talking about ourselves. We have a hard time recognizing what are we particularly strong at that's significantly better than the person next to us. And every time I facilitate a session where I'm helping people identify that, I have to encourage them to say, get over yourself. It's okay. Talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Recognize who you are. Recognize what your strengths are. You can also recognize your kryptonite. And if you have kryptonite, then find somebody who has a superpower that balances out your kryptonite, right? And so having kryptonite is okay, but you're better off to focus on the things that you're really, really good at, and then be so bold as to say, since I have these superpowers, what is this big, audacious vision or purpose that I can achieve because I am who I am and I am on the planet? Like almost imagine having a book published on your behalf that someone's going to write your biography, and it's going to say, Jodi Berg was on the planet because. Like fill in the because, and then work towards bringing that to life, right? And I truly hope that someday people will look back and say, wow, I am a different person because Jodi Berg was on the planet. That's all I need, and I feel completely fulfilled. Like that's just an amazing feeling to know that you've changed someone else's life in a good way.
Where do you see your business markets going in the future? So Vitamix related industries, where do you see that industry going in the future?
So Vitamix is in this whole space of health and wellness, and the way people think about food now is completely different than it was a decade or two ago, right? We now know that we can own our health destiny, not completely, but significantly more than we ever thought we could before. We also have so much more research and science out about the foods that we eat and why we should eat the foods that we should and the impact that they have on us. So that whole entire space, my dream is that it continues to transform and people will be even more open and that they won't go back to the sad American diet, if you will, right? And they recognize that they are valued and that they can control a bit more of their destiny. So, gosh, it's a big world out there, and Vitamix is currently only in about 130 countries, and there's a lot more countries and a lot more people, and every single person on the entire planet has a couple of things in common. Like we all eat, and we are all impacted by the food that we eat. So the more people that recognize that, I think that Vitamix has a long way to go. And I just want to gift something over to all the amazing people that are still at Vitamix and the new leaders coming in, that there's a big wide world out there, and I wish them all the luck in the world.
Do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
My parting words of wisdom to everybody is to take a moment and reflect on who you are and why you are the amazing person you are. Because whether your life was good, bad, or ugly, you are who you are today, and it's your choice if you want to do something with that. And the fact that if you are here in all of Northeast Ohio, there's people all around you that want to help lift you up and help turn those unique superpowers that you have into something that could make you a superhero someday. So find your purpose and live it.
I love it.
And look out, world, here you come, right?
Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.